Hello and welcome to the 151st episode of Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at common Magic the Gathering cards, at least 10 of them. And then I'll tell you, are they good in the Pauper format or not? And most of the times they're not. But when they are, that's an exciting day. Will today be an exciting day? Let us see. We'll start with Greenseeker, a card I do love. I don't know if it's Pauper worthy, though. Greenseeker is a single green mana for a 1/1 elf spell shaper. You can pay a green and tap this card and discard a card to search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. I love Time Spiral. And what Time Spiral does, whole Time Spiral block, well, at least the first two Time Spiral sets in the block, do a whole lot to reference old Magic cards. Future Sight is obviously going for future stuff, but the idea was that Time Spiral set was looking back at old Magic cards, bringing back some original old Magic cards, but you also had cards like this that evoke old style spells but put them in a slightly new context. And then you had Planar Chaos, which would literally shift the colors of old cards into new colors, and that could be kind of cool as well. Plus, it just felt very different and kind of wacky. And then Future Sight was looking ahead at all the potential things they might do, some of which panned out, some of which they never returned to. But Greenseeker here is doing a bit of a lay of the land impression with its ability. So lay of the land is a single green mana that searches your library for a basic, and you put it in your hand. So this does that, and it's repeatable. A repeatable lay of the land effect, and you do have to discard a card. So the flavor of this is that this creature here is shaping whatever spell that you discard into a lay of the land, and now getting you that mana for it. I think these are actually pretty cool cards that people, I don't think, appreciate as much as they probably should. This is not a free, but this is a way of discarding cards out of your hand to your graveyard. And those can be very useful. But it's not just a discard outlet. It is getting you a land in return. So it's really useful in the early game because you have a bunch of cards in your hand, and you can keep riskier hands to start with when you have a card like this, because you know that you can discard, that 7-drop that you wouldn't have gotten to anyway, and you can go find another land and put it on the table. That's pretty cool. But you can also, as we mentioned, discard something that you're going to reanimate later. And that can be pretty cool. I like this card. And, not just because it's got the Rebecca art on it, which, huge fan, definitely a huge fan of. But I think this is actually just generally a really cool card. It's a little bit slow in the Pauper format, but I really like it. I do really like it. I'm going to give this thing a 4. Which is maybe a little bit bias on my end, but I think there's some justifications on why this card could be good and could potentially go into a Pauper deck. But, it's not going to go in Elves. Although, actually, it could go in Elves. Elves is a deck that doesn't play a whole lot of lands. So having some creatures that can discard a card and go find one of the 4 or 5 lands that you put in your deck, I don't know. That sounds kind of good to me. You just do have like the Lord of the Rings land cyclers, your Generous Ent and stuff like that can go find you those forests, and that's essentially the same thing as this, but maybe even a little bit more efficient. I still like Greenseeker. I'm sticking with a 4. I do love this card, but I'll admit there are cards that are better than it. Next is Mesa Unicorn, a 1 and a white for a 2/2 unicorn with lifelink. That's it. And I think in a lot of contexts we would go, this is not that good. I can point to a lot of cards that are just straight up better than this. You think of something like Brightblade Stoat, or there's the Lorwyn one that's 2 white mana for, I forgot what it's called, but it's, both of those cards are 2/2s with First Strike and Lifelink, and they're just better. Problem is, both of those cards that I mentioned are uncommons, and this is common. And when you get to commons, your Lifelink choices are a lot more limited. We see lifelink creatures be played mostly in Caw Gates or any kind of Gates decks, especially white-based Gates decks. You're going to see things like the Sacred Cat, which is a 1-mana 1/1 with lifelink. It also has that Embalm? Is that what it's called? Yeah, Embalm. Yeah, that's what it's called. That can put another copy of it on the. You can exile it from your graveyard and give you a token copy of the same creature. So that's some kind of card advantage to have 2 1/1 lifelinkers that you can then pump up with Basilisk Gate and go gain tons of life. We've also seen Outlaw Medic be added to that deck with Outlaws of Thunder Junction, because that's a 1/3. I believe it's a 1/3. 1/3 with lifelink, and when it dies, you draw a card. So if your opponent does target it for death, you at least get something back out of the deal. And that's pretty good too. So this being a French vanilla card, 2 mana's good. Like, that's cheap. That's cheap enough. And 2/2 is okay. I mean, it's good enough stats. But if you're already pumping up a creature's power with and toughness with Basilisk Gate, I think you're probably fine just playing the Sacred Cat instead and having that cheapness out of the creature being able to come out earlier and then using the gates earlier. I think you probably just end up getting a better deal with the Sacred Cat, plus the embalming and being able to use it over again. So yeah, Mesa Unicorn's fine. I think it's, in terms of French vanilla creatures, this is one of the better ones. French vanilla being, a creature with just a single keyword ability. If it had no abilities on it, we call those vanilla creatures. So when they have a single keyword or even a couple of keywords, but only keyword abilities, we call those French vanilla. I think this is one of the better French vanilla cards we've seen, solely because of its ability to work in Gates decks. But I don't think it actually goes in the Gates decks because you have enough other creatures that handle that spot pretty darn well. I'm going to give this thing a 3, I think, which is probably a little high, but still kind of works. Bosk Banneret is 1 and a green for a 1/3 Treefolk Shaman. Treefolk spells and Shaman spells you cast. Cost 1 less to cast. I love cost reducers. They're pretty good. And this one I think is okay. 1/3 can block a decent amount of stuff. Paying 2 mana for it is okay, I suppose. It's not amazing, but it'll do all right. The problem is there's not a ton of good tree folk at common, and I don't know about shaman. There probably are a handful of good shaman, but shaman is a creature type that Wizards is less interested in printing these days. They've I guess they're being a little touchy on it, which I can understand, but it just means we're not getting many new shaman these days. So this is a card that is not actively getting better in the same way that some of these other Banneret creatures from the Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. Jesus. It's some of these Bannerets are a lot better because they continually get new cards. There's one that's like Merfolk and Soldiers, I think. And then there's like Elementals and Warriors. And those you will continually get better as you get more cards in the card pool. Sorry about that. And Bosk Banneret, I just don't think is getting all that much better. We did see Lorwyn Eclipse brought in some new tree folk. And some of them are kind of okay. But I don't think they're okay enough to make this into a playable Pauper card. I'm going to give this a 2.5. Still has some uses, but I'm struggling to figure out those uses in the meta right now. Cool card, though. Warped Tusker is 7 mana for a 6/8 Eldrazi Boar Beast, and it's got reach. And when you cast or cycle Warped Tusker, you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this token and add a colorless. And it cycles for 2 and a green. So you can pay 2 and a green, discard this card, and you draw a card. It's Modern Horizons 3, so obviously busted. Everybody knows that. But we don't actually see a whole lot of play for this. And we could. Monstertron is a deck type in Pauper, and it plays mostly colorless, but splashes green sometimes or most of the time. And this seems like a pretty solid option for that, right? 6/8 is pretty good power and toughness. Having reach is pretty good. You don't have a whole lot of flyers available to you in green, so something that's this chunky with reach can stop a lot of stuff. This can kill a Tolarian Terror into tracks. This can kill lots of those creatures pretty easily and still stay up. Plus, it has this cycling ability, so it's good even in the early and mid game if you're not ready to play it. You do have the ability to cycle it, get a card, and you still get the Eldrazi spawn, which can help you cast potentially the next Warp Tusker that you have. And even when you do cast it for 7 mana, you do still get one of those spawns. And we've seen those spawns be incredibly useful in a lot of different decks. The problem here really is that we just have some slightly better cards that you play in the Monstertron deck. You play the Boulder Branch Golem because it can gain you a ton of life. You play the Pinnacle Starship because it can do a bunch of damage to an opponent's creature. You are playing the Maelstrom Colossus because it's the one with Cascade. I play Brambleworm instead of this guy. I think you could make an argument that maybe you play this guy instead of Brambleworm, but Brambleworm has Trample, and it's a 7/6, and it can gain you some life, and it has some graveyard shenanigans with it. That's pretty good too. It's tough. It's tough. This is a good card. I wouldn't blink twice if somebody played it in a Monstertron deck. I bet they would find success with it and have a good time. But I think there's just slightly better cards, maybe slightly personal preference or player personal preference, but I also just don't remember seeing it in anybody's deck lists for any of the Pauper meta. And I think that's a little bit telling, while still being a very solid card. I'm still going to give this a 4.5, which is pretty darn solid for a card that sees no real Pauper play. But you look at it, you kind of got to respect the stats. If you have Tron, you can play this guy. 7 mana. That's what Tron mana can get you. It's pretty good. I don't know why it doesn't see more play, but I have some other cards that I prefer to play, and I think pretty much everybody has come to the same conclusion. While they might make different choices about the cards they use over this, I think most of us have come to the conclusion that we have a card that we would rather play more than Warp Tusker. Which is too bad. It's a good card. Maalfeld Twins is 5 and a black for a 4/4 zombie. When this creature dies, you create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. 6 mana for a 4/4. Not great. I do like the flavor here is that it's kind of a 2-headed zombie. So if it dies, you cut it in half or whatever, it becomes 2/2 zombies. That's fun. 6 mana for a vanilla 4/4. It's pretty bad. Even if when it dies, it becomes a couple of 2/2s. Still not amazing. You could put some of those black spells like Not Dead After All or something and sacrifice it in your mono black sacrifice deck, and now you're getting the dies trigger, but this is still coming back into play. Maybe you get a little extra value that way. Still, getting the initial 6 mana is a real chore when most of those decks want to play those single mana guys, the Nezumi Link Breakers and your Infestation Sages that will make a token when they die. And that's those guys are just giving you so much more value than this guy does. So he's pretty bad, honestly. Let's go ahead. And it's weird that they upshifted him in Foundations. Like, no, this guy might be too good. Let's upshift him to uncommon. I guess he was originally uncommon, but I feel like at this point we were like, yeah, hey, this guy seems bad. Let's throw him at common. And now, I don't know. Let's go ahead and give this thing a 2.1, I think. And even that might be a little generous, if you ask me. Next up, Lightning Talons. 2 and a red for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+0 and has first strike. It's not bad. It's not a bad suite of abilities. I would love it if this thing had flash, but that would be asking a little bit too much. It's nice being on an aura that this sticks around. And we've seen plenty of cards that might even be a little cheaper, like 2 mana, that would give a creature +3/+0 and first strike until end of turn. So I think paying the extra mana to get this effect permanently until it dies or goes away is worth it. But auras just inherently are a tough sell, knowing that your opponent can respond to it and kill the creature, and this wouldn't have a target to go on at that point and just goes to your graveyard. If they do kill the creature at any time, that's kind of negative card advantage for you. They're paying 1 card, you're losing 2 cards. That's disadvantage. You don't want that. That's why when you do see aura decks get played, it's because the creatures usually, like the Bogles decks, will have hexproof or are untargetable in that way by opponents. And then you can throw a bunch of auras on it because you know your creature is safer than it normally would. So I don't really know what card you put this on. You know, you'd have to, for those Bogles decks, you'd now have to splash red, and those decks don't really want to splash more colors than they have to. I think they prefer not to even have to play white if they didn't have to, but they do, because there's enough good white auras that they can't not play those. But they can get away with not playing the red ones. And so this kind of is a good card with no real home, and that's a shame. I will give this a 2.5. If it was white, I would give it a lot more than that. But it's not. Aardvark Sloth is 3 and a white for a 3/3 sloth beast with lifelink. Hey, another lifelink creature. This one's from Avatar, and or the Avatar Eternal, so it's not available in standard, but it's in those Jumpstart packs, I believe. And 4 mana, 3/3 lifelink. Whew. You know, if that unicorn wasn't all that good, this guy isn't all that good either. I think he's even worse, honestly. I'm gonna give this thing a 1.9. I think at this point, when you're paying this much mana, that just feels like a trap. And I don't particularly like that. Eriette's Lullaby, 1 and a white for a sorcery. Destroy target tap creature. You gain 2 life. That's a pretty good rate to destroy any tapped creature, and you gain a couple life. Sorcery speed really hurts it. You're not going to be able to use it in response to your opponent tapping the creature to attack, or tapping to use an ability or something like that. You have to wait for it to be on your turn. If your opponent has creatures of vigilance, this thing just dries up in your hand and shrivels. You got to take those factors into account. But still, it's okay. Problem is, white has so many good removal spells in and outside of Pauper, but in Pauper is where we're talking about here. And I think you just have enough that you'd play those and not worry about Eriette's Lullaby. Yeah, I think that's the case. Like, this seems fine, but we just have so many other good options. You can't put this one in your deck. I'm going to give this thing a 3.4, I think. It is still a removal spell. I do like that it gains you life. You know, sometimes you'll see these cheap removal spells will kill the creature but give your opponent life or something like that in white. And so it's kind of nice that this turns the table on that, but it's still a little too narrow, and the sorcery speed is probably what really kills it the most. I'll downgrade it a little bit more. 3.4, let's go to 3.2, I guess. Dispersal Shield, great art. 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell if its mana value is less than or equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. Huh. why doesn't this get played in Talarian Terror, in Mono Blue Terror? I guess we have enough good counter spells already, but this counters any spell, and your Talarian Terror is reduced cost when it comes into play, but it's still a 7-mana card. That's probably bigger than most of the things you're going to play against. This seems really good. Yeah, if you don't have the Talarian Terror or the Cryptic Serpent out, then this becomes a lot worse, but those decks are very much designed to be able to get the Talarian Terror out very quickly, and the Talarian Terror is going to stay on the field because it has that ward too. I could understand that if you cast this, if you have a Cryptic Serpent out and you cast this to stop one of your opponent's spells and they kill your Cryptic Serpent, when this thing goes to resolve, now it has to look, that's when it looks at your actually, does it? Yeah, that's, well, it doesn't tell me there, but that has to be when it happens, because in the same way that Spellstutter Sprite, I mean, that's an enters trigger, so it's a little bit different, but, you know, when Spellstutter Sprite activates its ability, it checks at the time. So if you kill a fairy, even if you kill the Spellstutter Sprite before, it's counting the number of fairies that you have, and then trying to cast or trying to trigger the ability. And if they don't have enough fairies at that point, if you've responded to that trigger by killing a fairy or two, then they won't be able to counter the spell because now the ability doesn't work. I don't think this checks on cast. Tell me if I'm wrong on this one. But I don't think this checks on cast. So I think you do have the opportunity to respond by killing your opponent's Cryptic, or killing, if somebody kills your Cryptic Serpent when you play this, then you don't get to check against the 7 mana that the Cryptic Serpent would be. Is that right? I mean, this doesn't say target permanent. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. You let me know, but I still think regardless of that potential edge case, this seems really good in Mono Blue Terror. A 1 and a blue, unrestricted counterspell. You know, it's not limited to non-creature spells. It's not limited to instants or sorceries. It's not limited to just creatures. This is a counterspell, just a normal-ass counterspell. And if you have a Talarian Terror out, it's anything 5 or it's anything 7 or less. This seems good. Should this see play? Why doesn't this not see play? All right. I'm going to give this 2 different scores. If I'm right that this works in a somewhat similar way to Spellstutter Sprite and can be responded to, then I'm going to give this I think I'm just going to give it a 6. I still think it's good. If it can't be responded to, which I don't think is the case, if it can't be responded to and just is checking when you cast the spell instead of on the resolution of the spell, then I'd give this a 6.4, I guess. This seems like a really good card. I don't play Mono Blue Terror. I've got a friend who does. Maybe I should buy him a couple copies just so he has this to play around with. I don't know, man. It seems good to me. It really does. Huh. Yeah, I think this is a good card. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this is a bad card, because I'm not seeing it. Mindstone. Hey, we were just talking about Mindstone. Mindstone. I think this is the best art of Mindstone as well. There's some really good Mindstone arts for sure. I mean, the classic one, obviously, but there's some good Mindstones. Is there any better Mind? I do really like this Mindstone too. I think that's a pretty good one. I have this one, this promo one. I don't know where I got that one, but I have it. That's a pretty nice one. Yeah, I still want to go with the original though, but I do really like this Lost Caverns of Ixalan one and going forward. Mind Stone, 2 mana for an artifact. You can tap it to add a colorless mana, or you can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice this artifact to draw a card. It's good. It's a commander staple, or was a commander staple. I think it's actually losing a little bit of usefulness in commander because the colored pips are so much more important these days, it seems. It's still really good, though. It's a 2 mana rock. Those are hard to come by. Can draw you a card when you don't need the mana anymore. It's really good in commander, and honestly, I don't even think it's that bad in Pauper. I think it could be pretty good in Pauper. You just don't see people play it. Maybe they should. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what deck should play it. It's an artifact that it could go into a affinity shell somewhere. Again, probably not Grixis affinity because you want to be able to produce colors, and especially in a 3-color deck. But this seems good. It just does seem good. It's hard to. I'm gonna give this a 5 because I truly don't know how else to score Mind Stone. It's a good card. It just doesn't really show up in any Pauper list, but it's Mind Stone. It's Mind Stone. I don't know what to say. It always seems like a good card to play. I know we have better or more specific things that you can play in your different Pauper decks, and in some decks this is going to be awful, but it's Mind Stone. All right. I was going to do a bonus card, but I'm so befuddled by Mind Stone. I think we should probably just end it there. Thanks for joining me on this one. We will catch you on the next one. See ya.